It's retro movie review time. Let's revisit The Shawshank Redemption. Hello, welcome to my world of stuff. I did mention in a recent video that I was going to be doing a retro review of The Shawshank Redemption, and I think now is the time to watch a film like this because it's uplifting, it's joyous, it's life-affirming, and I think those are things that we all need at the moment when the world is, well, should we say, slightly upended and in a bit of a mess, to be honest. So I think it's nice to sit and watch something which, despite the bleak nature of its core subject matter, is actually very uplifting and life-affirming. I've only watched this film once. I was stunned to discover when I dug out the 4K disc. You may remember that I picked this up fairly recently. I think I showed this in one of my physical media vlogs a little while ago. It's back that way somewhere. And as I got the disc, I thought, I haven't seen this for maybe 20 years. Maybe a bit less than that, I'm not entirely sure. But I've only seen it once. And of course, it's one of those films. I'm not going to rehearse the background of the film because if you're watching the video, you'll know the history of The Shawshank Redemption. But in short, it was released in 1994, directed and written by Frank Darabont from a novella, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption by Stephen King, which was expanded greatly by Frank Darabont into this frankly stunning screenplay. And it was a film that went by relatively unnoticed when it was released. It didn't do very well at the box office. It took something like 11 million on a budget of 25 million, was considered a flop. However, critics paid great attention to the film, and it received several Oscar nods the following year, which led to it being re-released when it actually started to generate some money. It eventually became a hit. And of course, this was in the early days of home video. The film was released on video cassette, later on DVD, of course, and Blu-ray and so on, and has since become one of the great cult films of all time. Cult, in fact, to the point that it isn't a cult anymore because everyone loves this film. And I think everybody who watches The Shawshank Redemption just falls in love with it. It is one of those great classics. Several things occurred to me watching the film, and I'll go on to talk briefly about what it is shortly. Is you probably wouldn't get a film like this made today, unfortunately. You watch this, and much as I love all the Marvel films, and the superhero films, and the action films, this is a proper piece of cinema. It's a proper piece of art, I suppose. The way it's made, the acting performances are stunning. It's the sort of film which rarely gets made today, and certainly rarely gets sort of mainstream exposure because the cinemas are full of superheroes and Bonds and so on. And I'm not dissing those films because I love those films as much as anybody. But this is a reminder of really great inspirational filmmaking. And of course, another thing which militates against it today is that there are no female characters in this film. Well, there's one, the lead character's wife, who is referred to in the credits as Andy's wife. She doesn't have a name. There are no other female characters because this is a film about a man's prison, and you have to think that if this film was put forward for production today, the studios would be very worried because it doesn't, I'm not going to say tick the boxes because that's a contentious turn of phrase, but it doesn't do what modern films need to do, and it doesn't really represent diversity in terms of gender and stuff like that. I mean, those are things which I don't care about personally. If I watch a film or a TV show, I'm interested in the story. I'm not interested in watching it and thinking, oh, look, there's a so-and-so character and there's this character. I just want a good story. I don't care who it is, what their gender is, what their sexuality is. Just tell me a good story, which is what The Shawshank Redemption does. So as I said, I think it's a film that would probably find it hard to get made today because it doesn't put up those flags that films need to put up these days. I'm not going to go on too much about the story because I'm sure you've seen this film, but I was just reminded watching it. It was just enthralling, 2 hours, 20 minutes, just completely immersive film. It's the story of Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, never better than in this film. We see him at the beginning of the film outside a house with a gun in the night, And then we sort of cut across to a courtroom scenario where it appears that he has murdered his wife and her new boyfriend. She's been having an affair. He's discovered. He's not very happy about it. And he goes to the scene of their rendezvous with a gun. And we're led to believe that he killed his wife and lover. He denies it. He says that he changed his mind, went away and threw the gun away. However, he's still convicted and he's sent to serve 2 life imprisonment terms in the formidable Shawshank Penitentiary. There he meets up with Red, played by Morgan Freeman, and a motley crew of prison inmates. It's tough. It's tough for him. I mean, you see him going to the prison for the first time and facing that first night in prison, knowing that he's there for the foreseeable. And you sort of put yourself in his shoes and think, God, what must it be like for somebody who ends up in that situation? I mean, you have a certain amount of sympathy, but for somebody who's committed a terrible crime, it's hard to sympathise with somebody who's in that position. But you sort of think, because you don't know the situation, you don't actually know if Andy has actually done this, because the film's left it slightly ambiguous. You do feel sorry for him, but he's quite withdrawn at first and he doesn't really want to engage. It's almost as if he's sort of scoping the place out and trying to work out the best way to survive. And it's surprisingly tough and brutal, that first half an hour, 40 minutes, because he's subjected to terrible abuse. He's beaten up and brutalised. But eventually he uses his wiles to play the system a little bit. In the outside world, he's a successful banker, and he helps one of the prison wardens, played by the brilliant Clancy Brown, who's been left sum of money in a will, but he reasons that this money is just going to be frittered away by the tax man if he buys a car. With the money, he's just not going to come out of it with any profit, and Andy overhears him and offers him some financial advice. This gives Andy a certain amount of cachet in the prison. He's sort of protected a little bit, and eventually his financial noose gets him in with the prison governor, who's a nasty piece of work, Governor Horton, who is himself playing the system to use prisoners on work details, undercutting contractors and making a little bit of money on the side. And because he knows Andy's got financial sensibilities about him, he sort of employs Andy to cook the books, if you like. In the meantime, the film actually then presents a number of sort of almost like vignettes, little episodic interludes of things that happen in the prison. It's Andy's battle to establish the prison library, which is sort of fallen into disrepair. He's teamed up with Brooks, who's an elderly prisoner who's been in the prison for about 40 years. And they team up to sort of resuscitate the library. Then we have a little vignette where Brooks himself is released from prison. This is quite poignant, because this is a man who has been, as Red says, institutionalised. He can't survive outside the prison, and sure enough, he doesn't, and that's quite poignant. You get these little stories within the story which build up the bigger picture of the whole Shawshank Redemption arc. And it's interesting, at the very beginning, Red, played by the brilliant Morgan Freeman. I mean, we think of Morgan Freeman today as this avuncular, elderly statesman of the American acting profession, but here he's still quite young and spry and nimble, and it's an astonishing performance. I mean, him and Tim Robbins are just knock it out of the park, as they say. It's a fantastic performance. But when he gets into prison, Andy realises that Red can get him things, and he's already got plans, because he asks for a little sort of pickaxe and a poster of Rita Hayworth, which he then uses, and we discover as the years go by, he's been working on his own surreptitious escape plan from the prison. It's just a fantastic film, pretty much flawless, really. I suppose you could pick holes in it if you wanted to, but what's the point? It looks beautiful. I watched this on 4K on the TV last night, and the picture is so vivid. The cinematography is by Roger Deakins is brilliant. Frank Darabont's direction is fantastic and sort of unshowy. As I said, the acting from everybody involved, from Tim Robbins down to William Sadler. So many people who give fantastic performances in this astonishing film. What it is, it's a bleak film. It's a film about the harsh realities of prison life in the 40s. It starts off in the 40s and ends up in the late 60s, because Andy's in prison for about 20 years. And we sort of see the privations that people in prison have to deal with, but we also see how resilient the human spirit is. And I was reading last night about the themes that people have seen in the film, religious and quasi-religious things. But I think ultimately, I think it shows you that human beings can adapt and can survive, and the resilience of the human spirit in these extraordinary circumstances, and people's ingenuity, and I think people's inherent goodness as well, because it pits sort of bad people who abuse the system with people who are in the system, turning it and making the best of it and making themselves better people. It's just an astonishing film, and it absolutely deserves the reputation it's garnered over the years. And as I said, it is one of those films that was very, very underappreciated at the time and has since gone on to have this extraordinary reputation. It turns up in most people's top 10 film lists. And yeah, now I've seen it a second time, it's in mine. It is just a great film. And I went into it thinking, oh, this is about 3 hours long. This is a long old haul, but it's actually not. It's 2 hours 22, which these days, when you think it's Spider-Man, it's 2.5 hours. Batman's 3 hours. It's almost a short film. But it 2 hours 22, it just flies by. It's so immersive and so engrossing. You're just caught up by the character and the situation. And like I said, I love the way it is split into these, certain parts of it are split into these little episodes of prison life and how people make the best of prison life. Great film. If you've never seen The Shawshank Redemption, remedy that as soon as you can, because it is one of the great cinema masterpieces. And because of that, I guess for me, obviously it's going to get a big chunky 10 out of 10, because it's a film that I can't fault. Shawshank Redemption is available now on all various formats. I'm sure it's on streaming somewhere. But if you've got a choice, pick it up on 4K because it looks absolutely gorgeous. Right, thank you for watching this retro movie review. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, why not press that subscribe button along there? You can see more stuff like this. Who wouldn't want to? Also, like and subscribe and comment and all that sort of YouTube stuff. Look after yourselves, and until I see you next time, the main thing you can do to make life better is to keep taking the stuff.